I will defeat the Powerpuff Girls, or my name isn't Mojo Projo.
Kellan versus Vorinclex. With a hand that slow, I imagine our opponent's going to steamroll us. Probably gets fast mana down straight into Vorinclex, but we'll try this one, keep our fingers crossed. Just a turn 2 Swiftfoot Boots for us, nothing too exciting, and a Nature's Law for our opponent. So I think we'll continue to set up this turn. We get into a command tower, and we'll make it so that we can throw the Swiftfoot Boots on the Kellan straight away. So set up with some card draw from Mask of Memory, and might as well get down the last equipment as well. Our opponent holding up 3 mana, so that could be a beast with him, but it's going to be pretty much the only means of removal he's got. So play out the commander, and we'll test him for that removal. Swiftfoot Boots. And yep, he did have the Beast Within. Going on to our commander, so still leaves us with a creature to equip things to. Wild Growth being thrown on a land for some more ramp. And then it's a Generous Patron, so putting a plus counter on our beast, and that will draw our opponent a card. Top decking Aurelia this time, which could be handy if we manage to hit with the Mask of Memory multiple times. So we'll throw the Mask of Memory onto the beast token, because we do want to be drawing cards here. I don't think my opponent's going to block. And then we'll go for a tutor with our commander so that we can cheat the command attacks next turn. And getting into some pro-green would be a good idea, so Sword of Feast and Famine, I think. And we're obviously keeping our commander in exile, not putting it in the command zone. Turn the beast in sideways, and if we hit here, then it will be draw 2, discard 1. We do land it, so at Mask of Memory going to clear 2 lands off the top by the looks of it, so we'll just get rid of one of those. It's a Defiler of Vigor for our opponent, so that will cheat some commander costs with Phyrexian mana and put plus counters on all our opponent's stuff. Alright, Sigarda's Aid's actually a really good draw there, so drop the land, play the Sigarda's Aid straight away, means we can cheat equip costs. And then we'll go for the Sword of Feast and Famine now. It can go straight onto the beast token, and this will give it pro-green. And we might as well tap out here, because we're about to untap all our lands anyway. So O Naginata, going to get equipped straight away for trample and +3 to power. And then we'll throw the Swiftfoot Boots on there so our opponent can't interrupt us as easily. And our creature is now a 9/6, and is going to have our opponent discard here, as well as gain us some card advantage. So they discard, we draw 2 and discard 1. Yeah, Call the Coppercoats could be cool. We get to buff tokens in this deck. And obviously the land's untapped with the Sword of Feast and Famine, so now we can get our commander down. And we'll get another tutor with Fighter Class, the Saga. And how's about a Commander's Plate with that, so that we can leave the Swiftfoot Boots on the Beast token. Might be able to waste a Fight spell for our opponent, because we can play that at instant speed and have it land. We'll give our commander protection from green. Okay, Contagion Engine is going to draw our opponent some cards. It won't kill off any of our creatures, but we best go for the Commander's Plate in response anyway. Minus counter on all of our creatures with this. So they draw 2 cards, we untap and gain some life from the Inventor's Fair. Draw a land for the turn in a mountain, so yeah, I think we're fine to get down the Aurelia here and get a couple of combat phases in. And then we've got 1 mana left thanks to the land we made, so Mask of Memory can go over to the Double Striker and start getting us some card advantage here. And our opponent decided to scoop there, unfortunately, so yeah, we were going to get an additional combat phase thanks to the Aurelia, and we would have even untapped all our lands as well. Mask of Memory would have drawn 2, discarded 1, a total of 4 times there thanks to the Double Strike and the additional combat phase, so obviously we go up a card every time there. Yeah, that was more convincing than I thought it was going to be, because I thought Vorinclex was going to steamroll us there. We'll play another one. Up against Grand Arbiter this time, and this time just a 1 lander will not do, so we have to mulligan. Alright, and get into more lands, and a means of making even more lands, so yeah, we'll have to try this. Not getting into the ramp very well with this deck, unfortunately. We get into a land on turn 2, so yeah, setting up with Sword of the Animus should be okay, hopefully. Then we can go for our commander on turn 3 and hope our opponent doesn't remove it. Holding up a single white mana at the moment. We draw into a Sword of Fire and Ice this time, so the pro-blue might be relevant. Shock down the Sacred Foundry and attempt to have our commander last an entire turn cycle. Our opponent didn't go for a swords at the end of our turn, so we'll assume that he doesn't have it. See the reality chip from our opponent. Okay, that is an Eiganjo, so let's get down a land here. We could... I mean, if they block with the reality chip, then we're taking it down anyway, so we don't necessarily need to go Eiganjo, but yeah, let's go for the Sword of the Animist here onto the Kellan. We get the land regardless here, just for attacking, and our commander does have double strikes, so our opponent just allows it through. And let's go for Black Blade Reforged before our opponent's commander comes in and taxes that. That is an Ensnaring Bridge for our opponent, so yeah, they have 3 cards in hand, meaning that we're going to have to be careful equipping up the Kellan here. Or the Kellan, is it called? Black Blade Reforged being switched off with the Pithing Needle. Drawing to another land, so just play that out and hold on to the Eiganjo. And then we might as well swing in here. I'll probably get down the Sword of Fire and Ice so that our opponent can't counter it. We might be able to remove the Ensnaring Bridge at some point. But we're not going to be equipping it onto our commander because, like I said, we can be ramping at least. Right up until the point our opponent uses more cards anyway. Up to 12 points of commander damage now. And let's go for the Sword of Fire and Ice. A Grand Abolisher from our opponent. Don't think we're looking to do too much during our opponent's turn anyway. But that does give our opponent something to equip with the reality chip. Right, an Infiltration Lens is well worth playing and equipping here. It doesn't buff the power and toughness of the Kellan. So we're just being held back by the stacks piece at the moment. Our opponent has 3 cards in hand and can play cards off the top. If he decides to keep hold of a card in hand, then we will be able to swing in next turn. That is a Sphere of Safety for some more Pillow Fort shenanigans. Only 1 enchantment available to our opponent though. Alright, there is a Commander's Plate, so yep, still not doing too much of anything. But I think we just pass the turn here. Just top decking really until we can actually start swinging in. Our opponent had the perfect card against us. Azorius Key Rune and a Sensei's Divining Top. So I'm wondering if wiping the board just to remove the reality chip from our opponent is going to be a good thing. That'll stay in play, but it won't be equipped, so it won't be of much use to them. So still won't be able to swing in here. Alright, Lauren of the Third Path is exactly what we wanted. Just have to pray that our opponent doesn't counter here. But of course our opponent has a mana drain because those control players always have mana drain. So we'll just get down the Commander's Plate now just because. And our opponent is down to 1 card in hand. 3 colourless mana made by the counterspell. Goes into a Sensei's Top. And now we see another piece, a Static Orb. So we're not going to be able to untap too much now. Just go for the 2 dual lands. Doubt we'll be able to do anything this turn anyway. And we get into another land. So seeing as how we're doing nothing else, let's just go for the board wipe here. And we might be able to get down our commander with just 2 power. But this will switch off the reality chip unless our opponent wants to go for the Grand Abolisher. Our opponent spins Sensei's Top. So the commander finally hit in play. And 2 cards in our opponent's hand, deciding not to equip the reality chip for some reason. And we'll just be playing that Inventor's Fair. Arcane Signet. Still not equipping the chip. A Golem Skin Gauntlets now. We'll give +1/+0 for each equipment attached to it. So in order to cheat a little bit of mana here, and this will allow us to tutor up something potentially relevant here. Could go for the Umezawa's Jitte, which is good with double strike. Mask of Memory we saw can be a good one as well. Yeah, Mask of Memory is probably our best bet for trying to get into something relevant. Spinning Top again. We draw the Mentor. A Smothering Tithe for our opponent to make mana during our turn. That will not need to be untapped to the Static Orb. We draw into Sigarda's Aid, which could help us with that Mask of Memory. We do cheat command attacks from the Exile Zone, so it will just be 1 additional mana from the Grand Arbiter. Our opponent's still not swinging in at us with the commander. We draw into SRAM Senior Edificer. So we can go for the Infiltration Lens being equipped here, and then decide if we want to go for the Eiganjo being played or not, because we could just play the SRAM instead of the Sigarda's Aid. Of course our opponent has a Swords to Plowshares though. So we'll play the Eiganjo, and we might as well go for the Sigarda's Aid then, seeing as how it costs an additional mana. The chip being equipped finally. And we draw into a Sol Ring, so that's probably going to be a good thing to play out this turn. See a Tabernacle from our opponent now. All creatures have destroy this creature at the beginning of the upkeep unless you pay 1. So seeing as how we're not going to keep any creatures in play anyway, until we've got a surplus of mana, we'll just pass the turn and slowly gain mana. And then our opponent goes for the Armageddon and wipes all the lands from play, so I think it's safe to say that we can call it a day there, because it's just taking way too long to actually do anything. Actually, it's taking way too long to do nothing whatsoever. So we'll get on with another game. Trying our hand against Krenko this time with a little bit of ramp to start off with. We will try this. Hopefully can use the card advantage on the Jeska's Will to get some actual equipment here. Obviously we can always do that with our actual commander though. And we draw into a mountain for the turn, so just play that, and yeah, we're going for the Boros Signet as opposed to the Kellan. Mog War Marshal for our opponent on turn 2. We'll make at least 2 goblins. And there we see an Arid Mesa, so continuing to get into the lands. So while we're searching the library here, what equipment are we going to go for? Probably best to just go for protection from red. So Sword of Fire and Ice should be fine. Meaning that we put the Sacred Foundry into play tapped. And then we'll play our commander from the command zone as the Birthright boon. Just need to hope that our opponent doesn't get into any kind of artifact removal now. And Goblin War Chief coming into play is going to give all the goblins a discount and haste, so likely seeing the Krenko with haste next turn. And we just keep drawing into lands. So maybe slow rolling with the Sword of Fire and Ice and then going for a Vanquish the Horde onto our opponent's commander, onto our opponent's entire board would be better. So yeah, we'll get down the Sword of Fire and Ice and pass. And yeah, not even going slow at all here. That was, if Magic Online will stop being weird, a Goblin Lookout. So sacrifice a Goblin and can give +2 to the power of Goblin creatures. So yeah, definitely a good time as we plummet down to 24 to play out the Vanquish the Horde, which I dare say will only cost us 2 mana, yes. And then that will allow us into the Kellan. And we'll test our opponent on some spot removal, because we can't get the equipment onto our commander, unfortunately. But the good thing about this commander going down is that we can always go for another tutor, and then it will still cost 3 to get it out of the exile zone, like we've already seen. So there, our opponent casts a Chain Lightning. We will not copy it. And then is a Hobgoblin the Bandit Lord. And a Champion's Helm, so let's get down the Inventor's Fair. We can start gaining incremental life, which might be relevant this game. And we could just play our commander for 5 here, and then equip it with the Sword of Fire and Ice straight away, which might be an idea because our opponent's going to get away from us if we're not careful, so yeah, we'll do that. Miss out on the tutor, of course, but this gets us a turn ahead. And obviously the Mirrodin Sword cycle will go very well with the double strike on our commander. We'll draw 2 cards and shock 2 things. So there is the Krenko Mob Boss, which we can deal with our sword. 2 shocks onto that will do. Alright, so let's see here. We can play a land. We've got a tutor with the fighter class. Can have our opponent discard both the cards in his hand with a Sword of Feast and Famine maybe. So yeah, let's drop the fighter class. And we'll go for untapping our lands and dealing with our opponent's cards in hand over there. We can actually get down the Arcane Signet first here. Or we could have levelled up this, I think, and had it so that the equip abilities cost 2 less, but I don't suppose it matters either way. So our commander now a 6/6, and we'll swing straight through our opponents. We've got protection from all colours except white. Obviously red is the only relevant colour here. So first strike damage hits, we will untap our lands, and the Sword of Fire and Ice shocks the Krenko. Then it happens again, and we shock the Krenko again. And we were drawing into Hammer of Nazan and a Goblin of our own there, so ironically would have ended up making more goblins than our opponent by the end of the game. That was another fast one, I think, so we'll try getting one more in. Versus Drana and Limvala this time. Yeah, we never got to cast that Jeska's Will, did we? Sword of the Animist has served us well in previous games as well, so we'll try this. Again, we are on the play. Our opponent just gets down a tap land as well. There is a plateau for us, so we can either get down the Sword of the Animist, ready to equip to our commander, but we can get this down on turn 3, and then turn 4 is play and equip this, so let's go for the tutor here. Don't have anything too incredible in hand. Maybe we can ramp ahead of our opponent with some pro-white as well. So let's see some play from the Sword of Hearth and Home this time. Not putting our commander in the command zone. Our opponent getting down another tap land. There's a Boros Signet, which is a little bit awkward. We'll shock down the Sacred Foundry, Does our opponent have a sword? We'll challenge him to have it. Yeah, we'll go for the Killian. I was actually thinking of going for the Swiftfoot Boots previously. It would have been good this turn to get down Boros Signet into a Swiftfoot Boots and take a turn off with the Kellan. But turns out our opponent doesn't have removal on it anyway. He's still got time to deal with it. A Verak warped Sengir. That's an interesting commander, and we don't see much of this one anymore. Alright, there's a Lightning Greaves. So, get down this Sunbaked Canyon. Our opponent's got 6 cards in hand. I think we take advantage of the full grip there, and we'll go for the Jeska's Will on both abilities. So that obviously ramps us ahead. We've got Pure Steel Paladin and the SRAM. So let's play out the SRAM, and then we can get Pro White onto our commander with the Sword of Hearth and Home, and that will cantrip thanks to the legendary creature that we just got down. And that gets us back into the Krenko Tin Street Kingpin. Do have a little bit of a token sub-theme in this deck, because obviously the Kellan is going to buff those for every equipment and or aura that is on there. So I can swing straight through here, straight through the Death Touch. And there's not much point in flickering the SRAM, but we'll just point over there anyway. And we'll hold up a white mana on our opponent. Then it's same again because we've got the double strike. Like I said before, the Mirrodin Sword Cycle is really good. Go for a red. And yeah, that's enough to see our opponent scoop, unfortunately. Obviously doesn't fancy his odds of getting into removal for the Sword of Hearth and Home. But next turn, we were drawing into... not sure, might have gone for the Sword of the Animist there, because we would have had 2 untapped lands. Drawing into a Buried Ruin, we would have played the Mountain and the Pure Steel Paladin for certain. Because Metalcraft on this means that our equip cost 0, and that obviously makes it more easy for us to get all these equipment down. So yeah, over the next few turns, maybe next turn it would have been Krenko and the Lightning Greaves as well if we could have afforded it, and we could have seen some buffs on the Goblin tokens that we would have made. But every game where we seem to get ahead, our opponents just seem to scoop on us, unfortunately. So yeah, having double strike in the command zone's pretty damn good, apparently. I wasn't expecting Kellan to do all that much. I just built this deck for the fun of it, but yeah, double strike in the command zone and a tutor in the command zone is a very interesting combination. Good one for Boros. If you want to see more from this deck, then let me know in the comments section as usual, and massive thank you to the patrons as usual as well for their constant support. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.